Now, of course, students are going to have to test. That's a part of every curriculum. That's a part of teaching. As part of education is that testing. But how you go about testing, there's a procedure for that as well. At least in my class, I have a procedure how I do the testing. Here's a true story. 1 year I was at the high school, and boy, this is how old I am, I guess. We actually had Scantrons back then, and so I had a history test, and students had the Scantrons, and they had the test, and students, fill the answers on the Scantron. I had one student cheat, not to the point where they actually were finding the answers, but they were one of our smart students, and they were actually writing down the answers in Scantron, and then they were sharing those answers with other periods later on. And so ever since that moment, I thought to myself, I gotta make sure I have some really good solid procedures on how I'm gonna do my testing, so I can make sure that never happens again. Now, I'm not talking about the test today, exactly what you should be grading for, testing for. That's a whole other conversation. I just want to talk about the procedures I have in my room and how I do testing in my room, so that way you can avoid any kind of cheating. That way you can avoid any kind of problems. That way there's a routine in place so you can be most effective and efficient as possible. And so as students are testing, I will normally be in the back of the room, and I'll have my seating chart here with me. So I'll be standing in the back of the room. And nowadays, no longer do I have Scantrons. It's on the Google form. It's a Google form. It's a Google test. So it's a Google form, Google test is what they're on. That has been a blessing of all my years teaching. That has been one of the great things to come along, because that will automatically mix the answers and the questions. It can give them feedback right away, or it can hold on to later on. Grading is super easy, right? So all those benefits of that. So I use Google Form for my test, but if you use something else, that is okay as well. But what I do is on the day of the test, first of all, I have directions on the board how to get our class started. Students will grab their Chromebook, they'll come back to their seat. So I have a student sitting at the desk with their Chromebook, and their Chromebook will be closed because I want to give them directions. And then what I will tell them, I'll give them the directions. I'll tell them what the test is going to be on. I might tell them, hey, here's the previous statistics from previous years about it. Whatever information I want to share with them, I'll tell them what to do after the test as well. But once I give the instructions, I'll say, go ahead and sign on and start the test. And then I'll walk to the back of the room. And I'll be back here just monitoring everything, because from back here, I can see all the screens that are open. So that way I know if something is not as it should be. I can tell, from back here, if a student is kind of turning sideways, they see they're trying to copy somebody else, and all those things. And then also I'll kind of walk the room a little. I'll kind of walk forward a little bit, taking a look at things, just kind of see here, see where eyes are at, and so forth. So just a way of monitoring the room. But the next thing I tell my students is this. I said, when you are done with the test, raise your hand so I can mark off that it's been completed. The idea behind this is that by doing this, I can still monitor everything, but I get an idea who's done, not done. So that way I know who I have to keep eye on, not keep on. Because if I have 30 students and I don't know exactly who finished the test or didn't finish the test, I'm still trying to monitor all 30 students, when in essence, I may only have to monitor 3 or 4 of them that are left taking the test. So I'll tell the students, raise your hand when you are done. They'll raise their hand. So let's say over here, Susie's done. I'll come up to Susie. I'll take a look at her test. I say, excellent, hit submit. She hits submit. And then I'll circle her name on my seating chart. That tells me she is done. All right. And then I'll kind of go back here, wait for another hand. Let's say it's over here. Boom, awesome. All right, see, perfect. I'll mark it off. And so by doing that, by walking the room, I'm monitoring. By walking the room, I'm marking off who's done, so I know exactly who I need to focus my attention on. Also, I can keep track of students who I notice maybe aren't working or zoning out or something else. That's another reason I have them raise their hand when they are done. And then the last thing you want to do is this. You want to have something for students to work on when they are done with the test. Because if you give half an hour, let's say you give the entire period for test, we have 50 minutes. Let's say you give 50 minutes for the test, and students are finished in 20 minutes. They got 30 minutes to do something. And if you don't give them something to do, there's a good chance there may be some disruptions, maybe possibly cheating, maybe talking to somebody, stuff you don't want, behavior you don't want. So you got to make sure you have something put in place for students to work on as soon as they are done with the test. The procedure for my class is quite simple. I'll tell students when they're done with their test, they're to work on the Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is like a video you can watch and answer questions. And so they already have their Chromebooks there, and so they're done with the test, I mark off, and then they can start watching the video with some headphones, and they can go ahead and do that while other people are still working on their test. But the bottom line is you want to make sure you have something in place so you can monitor the class, something for students to work on when they're done. You just want to have a good procedure put in place when it comes time for test taking.